Hello and welcome to another episode of the Reverse Mentor Lab,
where we engage with thinkers from around the world to explore how leaders of today can learn from leaders of tomorrow.
You're back with your hosts. I'm Joshua.
And I'm Jens.
In this episode, we'll be chatting to Michael Houghton. Michael is a young leader in the fire engineering world within the UK. From time to time, he also creates social media content for both clients and his media agency through videography and through the use of FPV drones. For those who don't know what FPV stands for, it's first person visual. He has tried his hands at streaming video games, creating content on YouTube, starting digital book clubs, you name it, he's given it a go. See you in the episode. Michael, welcome to another episode of the Reverse Mentor Lab. It's awesome to have you with us, and thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Josh and James. It's good to be here. It's nice to see you guys finally. I know it's taken a while to set this up, but I'm happy to be here and excited to have a conversation with you guys.
Welcome. Great to have you.
Yeah, so I'm the odd one out on the call today because both Michael and Jens have some high-tech cameras, and we were joking before we started recording that tech isn't always our friend. But fortunately, we've been able to meet today and connect through this virtual world. So yeah, awesome to have both Jens and Michael to deep dive on some things today. And Mike, maybe before we get into the nitty-gritty side of things and what we've outlined to discuss today, tell us a bit about your story. What makes Michael?
Right. So I suppose it all started, for the last sort of 10, 15 years, I've really been quite obsessed with capturing things. And it all sort of started with a camera, and a really bad camera, really, and photography, which I think most people who get into video start somewhere along the lines of photography. And I never really did anything with those photographs. And I think most of the time it was because I was too scared of what people thought. And I didn't really want to share it because, we all grow up in a world as youngsters, and probably worse now than it was when I was a kid, where you're really judged for what you say and show and feel. So I never shared anything, and it kind of sat with me for a long time until probably beginning of last year. Just before lockdown, actually, when I kind of went, some things happened in my personal life, and I thought I want to just, I pulled the switch and I went, I'm just going to start putting this stuff out into the world, and I don't really care what people think. And that kind of led me down a road of trying a whole lot of stuff, trying YouTube, getting into FPVs and drones and those sorts of things. And have quite an obsessive personality. So I think I've started with the lens of I want to learn how these platforms work, and use that as the reason why I should create content. And I think that's kind of something that I've become quite obsessed with. And I think something that is going to be quite valuable to a lot of people, hopefully listening today. And maybe there's some things that I've learned along the way, or certainly things that I think are worth looking at, that people can maybe spend a little bit of their time, because we spend lots of time on these every day. And a lot of that time is not really productive. So I've tried to use my time on these devices as productive as possible, while still enjoying it. It's a way for us to relax, etc. So yeah, I make videos on YouTube. I make content for brands. I fly drones. You can see them sort of up there. Those are racing drones. I started with normal GPS drones, and I kind of worked my way away from that into the hobby sphere. And now I'm kind of just getting my hands in whatever I can get involved in on the social media front, because I think both for brands to build their own business up, and then also for people personally to build their brands. I think that's really important. We live in a world that's all digital. And unless you have a digital presence, you are, unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, you're going to get left behind, which is potentially a sad way. But unfortunately, that is the world we live in. And like anything, you either got to find a way to get ahead, or you're going to get left behind. And, that's life and that's business, and I'm at peace with that. So anyway, yeah, sorry, rambling a little bit, but that's kind of that's the short story.
That's cool. So what is the content you're putting out? So can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, sure. So when I started, I suppose, so YouTube is quite a daunting place when you first, you guys are obviously uploading onto YouTube, but uploading as a single person, it's quite a daunting thing. And either you're very comfortable in front of a camera, or you're not, or you are very happy talking about a particular subject because you're an expert in it and you can talk about it, or you aren't and you're still learning that field. So I kind of decided what I would do is I would learn FPV and I would document that process so that someone else, because sort of 2 years ago, it was the new thing. Everyone was trying to get into this new way of filmmaking. And I thought I would document that process. And that's kind of what my first video was, this pretty much sat in this exact spot saying, I'm starting FPV and these are some of the things that I'm looking at now. And, follow along with me. The video is absolutely shocking. It's terrible. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. I hate watching it, but it's, it was something I needed to do to get my foot in the door, to just, prove to myself, you can do it. And so what? No one watched the video for probably 3-4 months. And then, but that doesn't matter, because the whole process of just documenting things is kind of where I'm learning. So it started with FPV. And then, I've had cameras and stuff for ages, and I started playing around with brands. And originally it was just, pick something in the kitchen as an example and try and make a little brand video for it, or ask my friends for an object and make a video on it. And that's how I started learning how to do this stuff. And I think it's a free way that people can learn how to make film and video from their home. And you don't need expensive equipment and, nice lights and all that sort of stuff. You can do it with your phone. And I think that's what people will see on TikTok and Instagram now. You're seeing these people showing you that you can make content from anywhere. So some of the videos have been me explaining things like, how these work, how I'm setting them up, camera settings, that's sort of tutorial type, how-to type videos. And then I experimented with vlogs, videoing myself going through a day and like surprising my gran on Christmas Day during lockdown when she was all alone from the balcony, like that sort of thing. And I would say I haven't quite figured out what my niche is yet, but I have certainly tried everything, or almost everything, on the road to finding out what that is.
Yeah, awesome. Just for the people who have never heard about what FPV stands for, can you just give us an explanation?
Yeah, sure. So I guess in the last 10 years, cinematography has gone from, ground-based shots to a lot of shots that incorporate, flying camera. Well, it's not a flying camera. It's a camera attached to a flying vehicle. And most of the time that's a drone. It used to be on helicopters and things like that, but that's obviously really expensive. You need a lot of pre-flight preparations. Not that you don't with drones, you do still need to do that, but it's a lot simpler to put a drone into the air with a camera on it. And kind of that has had an evolution from cinema drones, which carry cinema cameras, which are kind of on a gimbal. It's very steady, the thing that everyone's used to seeing. And then probably 4 or 5 years ago, things started popping up on the internet of FPV drones capturing, dives down mountains, or people jumping off cliffs and the drone chasing them down, that sort of thing. It's quite a visceral image that you're looking at, and it feels like you are flying, because it's not static in one direction or backwards, sideways. It's sort of this smooth, like a bird, really. And FPV stands for first person view. So you put on a set of goggles, and the goggles show you what the drone is seeing, and you have all the control. So you're a pilot. You're not helped by GPS or any sensors and telemetry and gyros and those kinds of things. You fly the quad, we call them a quadricopter. You fly the quad all by yourself, but you see exactly what it sees. So it gives you a precision you can't really get elsewhere. And now that within itself has evolved from small FPV drones, which are these ones, which are kind of this big, to cinema FPV drones that can carry a cinema camera that can be super high quality, high fidelity, that people can shoot, commercials and movies on, those sorts of things. So that's what FPV is.
Thanks. That will help.
Yeah, Jens, Mike, you'll have a quick laugh at this, but Jens and I have recorded a number of other podcasts and in different settings and things like that. And Jens often chirps me for coming up with all the formal definitions of things. So that's why he just had to clarify that, not only for the listeners, but also for just some of his thinking. So, Mark, it's awesome to hear just about your story and, the creation and experimentation that you've engaged in and things like that. And just want to double click on something quickly, what you mentioned about learning through doing. And what do you think that's taught you in other areas outside of, just creating through experimentation and to your immediate interests?
Yeah, so the whole concept of, I guess, learning through doing or trying and failing is, it's at I mean, without getting too philosophical, it's kind of at the core of what we do as humans, really. You are a baby or a child, and you try a walk and you fail, and that gives you data. And that data is the data you use to move forward. And we do this in everything. You do this at school. You do this in your social life. You do this in your sporting life. Every part of your life, you have this try and fail mechanism. And I think what's very difficult about this world of social media is that there's so many eyes. And I think that people feel that pressure. And, that's normal. We aren't built to have so many people looking at us like that. That turns on sensors in your body that go, gee, what is going on here? So, I think the learning through doing is primal, but learning through doing in the social media world is not really that natural because we don't like failing in front of lots of people, or what it you think is lots of people. There are lots of people seeing your thing, but most of them are just going to scroll through it and not really pay much attention to it. Doesn't spend enough time. If you failed at that particular piece of content, it's probably not going to occupy their brain for more than 2 seconds, and it's gone. It's into the ether, and they'll never think about it ever again. So, I think it takes you a long time to get to grips with that, and it's taken me a long time to get to grips with that. I don't think I don't think I have a grasp of that yet. But the failing and trying and learning through, giving something a go, whether it's make a tech, we watch things all day, we consume content all day, and we have a really innate ability to look at something and go, oh, I've got an idea that maybe is similar to that. But 99% of the time, people don't action any of these things. I mean, you guys can probably vouch for this. You'll listen to a podcast and or watch a movie or watch a YouTube video or watch a TikTok or a reel or whatever, and you'll think, oh, I got a spin on that. And you'll never do anything. You'll never do anything with that idea. Some of them you might, but 99% of them, you'll do nothing with them, and they'll just disappear, And I think that's a shame. And I'm not saying making content or trying this is for everyone. It's definitely not. But I think giving it a try is worth it, because there are a lot of really, really successful YouTubers and content creators that didn't start out comfortable in front of a camera, but saw an opportunity and took the opportunity. And that's no different to business. There are lots of people that see an opportunity in, I don't know, selling ceiling fans, but are not an expert in ceiling fans, but they do it anyway because it's an opportunity that you can't pass up on. So hopefully that's kind of how I see the whole give it a shot, why not mentality.
Yeah, I love that. And to go a little bit deeper, they're most probably like I was in the beginning as well.
Sound.
Can you hear me, Josh?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I've got you. Michael,
yeah, hello?
Either of you. Oh, God. What is going
on? Hello?
Maybe just a sound glitch on Mark's side.
Maybe.
Sorry, I don't know what's happening.
No worries, man.
It's fine. We're not live.
Oh, yeah.
Technology.
Jens and I had a disaster in a live session the other day, but like you said, don't.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't hear us.
You. I can't hear anything, but I've got
Check
sound coming through my headphones.
Check the mic in the StreamYard settings, so that it'll.
I'm not getting any audio from you guys.
I was just checking his settings.
Yeah, no, I've got the mic settings are set up, and I've just done the audio test, so I can hear the audio test, but I can't hear you guys.
Hello. But Josh, you can hear me normal, right?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I've got you guys back, and I didn't even change anything. Damn,
no worries.
Sorry about that. You guys are snipping this stuff, aren't you? hopefully.
No.
Yeah, don't stress. We just leave it all in. It's part of making it happen. But cool. No, Jens, you can carry off with the train of thought that you were on.
I was just laughing that we have had that in a live session. That's worse. I needed to talk like 2 minutes without Josh. But today's easier. We can cut that out. No, let me start with the question again.
Cool. Sorry about that.
No worries. How was it for you when you released your first video? I assume there are a lot of listeners of our podcast or people watching this on YouTube who are kind of like they're itching to do something. Like you said, they have ideas, but it's like, no, I can't put that out. It's not good enough. How was that for you? Can you give us a little bit of that story?
Yeah, sure. It was terrifying. So let's just start there. And it's terrifying, and it took me a long time. I uploaded it and then deleted it, and then uploaded it and then waited. And I was so nervous to upload this first video, because also you must remember, you're either going to be talking in a subject where you really know what you're talking about. And I would say that's probably a really good place to start. If you're going to upload videos, talk about something that you know about. And if you don't know about it, then document your process of learning through that particular subject, because then no one can really fault you, and you can't fault yourself for making mistakes. And as long as you're open and transparent with your audience about, listen, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to document myself learning this so that you can learn along with me. That's kind of the approach I took. But I mean, uploading the first video was stressful, and recording it, I remember being super nervous recording it when I was the only person in the room. So if you are thinking about creating content, which I hope most of you are in some form or another, it doesn't need to be video. It could be anything, text and sound, even whatever it is. I think creating content is important for the modern entrepreneur and the modern leader. I think it would be very hard to argue that it isn't important. But the process of uploading the first video was terrifying. And how I kind of dealt with that is you need to give yourself some confidence and some props along the way, because, the first hurdle, the first video is the hardest, because you're trying to overcome fears of what people think about you and what you think about yourself and what you think that video might, how that will be portrayed to the public. So I think what you need to do is get it uploaded and then turn everything off and start looking at the next video, really, because you'll obsess. And I recently just did this the other day, because I'm kind of going through a trough, I would say, in my YouTube growth and my content growth. And I just turned off all the notifications and all of the analytics. And I look at it once a week at most, because I just felt I was just getting down and it was demotivating me. And I think if you're doing content because you want to do it, it doesn't really matter what people think. For the first probably 10, 15 videos, some of the most famous YouTubers out there, like Mr. Beast, if you guys know who Mr. Beast is, he's one of the most famous YouTubers, biggest YouTubers, spends the most money, ludicrous money. He didn't have any viewers for the first 50 videos. And it took him many, many years to get to where he is. So, I think people need to not be so hard on themselves, much like you would tell a kid when they're learning how to play football, don't cry if you can't get the ball in the goal, just keep going. It's the same. You're learning a new craft. There's lots of components to the craft of creating video. And I'm not saying I certainly am nowhere near being proficient in it, but you have to start. You have to start, and starting somewhere is better than not starting altogether.
You mentioned early on the judgment piece. How do you work with that?
How do you work with judgment? That's a good question. You kind of just have to ignore it, and I know that's hard. That's hard to say. I mean, there's two types of judgment, or judgment because people are just trolls, and that's the internet. And if you haven't come to terms with the fact that they are just trolls on the internet, people who just have nothing better to do than to just be mean, then you probably shouldn't be on the internet, because that's unfortunately the place, the kind of the world that internet lives in, or social media certainly lives in. And it took me a long time to realize that my friends weren't your real. If you're worried about judgment, most of the time it's probably from your friends and your family and your loved ones. Those are the people you really care about their opinion. And at the end of the day, as cruel as this is, if they judge you, then they're not those are not people that you want in your life. Those should be the people that are supporting you. And by doing this, one way or another, you're going to find out the people that judge you, in which case you can just blacklist those people from your life and you've done yourself a service, and it'll suck. But, you shouldn't have people that bring negative energy around you in any walk of life, not just, the social media and the content creation, just anything. So the judgment thing is hard, and don't get me wrong. I feel like people are judged, but if you really think about it, there's no real reason for people to judge you. It's probably just you making excuses, to be honest. That's what I've found. But with me personally, just making excuses for myself why I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, so if we just, Mike, it's been a fascinating conversation, lots of nuggets so far, but if we just tie a few things together. So the first we spoke about learning through doing. Jens has asked you questions around judgment, and you've spoken about your own personal journey through creation. And now if you take that a step further and you say, how has creation helped you as an individual? How has it helped your thinking? How has it helped you? And why do you keep creating?
So also another good question. And I don't know if hopefully I'll be able to get a solid answer in here. I think, how has it helped me in sort of my life? So I work in the world of consulting. So I'm a design consultant at the moment in the world of fire engineering. So it doesn't really matter what my field is. I'm a consultant, and I feel like I'm a people person. And what I would strive to achieve one day is to be really well-rounded in dealing with people and how to interact with them and get them what they want, but equally maybe potentially get what I want from them, kind of thing, selfishly. And that's business, whether that's selling a product or a service or building a brand or whatever. And I think at the end of the day, at the very core, like you would write an article or a recipe or make a how-to video, there is a very specific goal for that video, a very specific person that you have in mind, and I haven't quite got this yet, and I think that's why my YouTube is sort of in a trough at the moment, is figuring out exactly what the person watching your video wants, and that is super valuable when you can learn how to go from a question you have in your head to or a question that they have to producing something that they need that helps them get to their end goal. Because if the viewer doesn't get anything out of the video, they're not going to watch your video. So if it's not entertaining, if they don't, I like to think about it, there should be a change in the person, or the way they feel from the start to the finish of your video. They should feel happier by the end, or sadder by the end, or angry by the end, or they have learned something by the end. And if you haven't achieved that, then your video doesn't have any purpose. And I think the same thing goes for a conversation with a person, or a meeting that you attend, or an article that you write, or a recipe, or whatever it is that your niche is for the people listening. You need to have that goal in mind, and I think creating content that has purpose will make you understand that in the world that we're moving towards. You need to understand how to get people what they want in the format that they want to see it, and understanding how you can take your business, whether that's selling ceiling fans, or whatever. If you can figure out a way to make that digestible in the format that that the people you want to buy your product, then you've won. And I think that's kind of what I'm learning along the way here, and it's helping me in my real life, truly. You're also filming yourself, so you don't want to have to edit long videos all the time that have lots of chopped up things. You can speak one long sentence or one paragraph, and that's a nice cut. But if you have rambled and haven't made any sense, then you can't just chip and change and add them all together. It doesn't flow and doesn't make sense, and then you've lost the viewer. So a lot of it, I'm learning slowly, and but it'll be different for everyone. And it might be the tiniest little thing, like how to introduce yourself, that you might gain from one video, and that's something you'll keep with you for the rest of your life. So not to say that the things I've learned are the things you'll learn. It'll be different, and it'll just depend on the way you interact with people, and you interact with the camera, and you interact with everything around you. So Yeah.
Double clicking on that, what did you learn about yourself doing that?
I learned that I'm very impatient. and that I get lazy. I get lazy with stuff, actually. So I found that in the beginning, I used to upload I would edit a video, let's just say, and once it was done, that's what I would upload, because I thought that was the best I could do. And I've started to kind of figure out now that I don't think you should ever upload the first thing. I don't think you should ever upload your first version. And I think this is true for pretty much everything outside of, like the content like TikTok and Reels, which are super digestible, very informal content, which I think is a different thing. I'm talking about formal content that you want to do well and that's supposed to last a long time in the world. I don't think you should ever upload your first one, because you can always do better. And I didn't do that when I started, and it's something that I want to take forward now. It takes time, though, and that's the other thing about all of this, is how much time creating stuff takes. But there's another avenue. Documenting things takes as much time, but it's a different way of, and I think this is something people don't quite maybe appreciate, that when people say you're a content creator or you want to create content, you don't have to create anything. You don't have to make a movie or make a short film or make music. You can just document what you're doing, and you're doing it anyway. Hopefully, that's the most efficient way. Just document what you're doing anyway. And there's people that watch that. Some of the most famous content creators were just vloggers. They just live their life and video their life. And people are just absolute fans of these people and them as a person, and it doesn't really matter. And you can read the comments. They don't care what they do. They could, change a toilet for all they care. They just want to see that person interact and understand the way that they go through the world. So, yeah, I learned that I'm impatient, but I kind of knew that, and yeah, that's kind of some of the things I'm learning along the way. And I also learned that I think it's solidified. I think I am good with people and understanding what they want, and maybe more so off camera than on camera, and figuring out how do you take this interaction into an edit is something that I'm figuring out. And that's a different art form. Talking to people, I'm happy to do. I could do that all day, but taking that from an audio clip into something that someone sees visually and it helps them understand, I'm learning.
Yeah, I think we're all learning, Mike. And I think that's something that the sooner that people realize that, the sooner that we can look to actually create something of lasting value, whatever that may be. It doesn't necessarily just need to be a piece of content that goes onto the internet and sits and is consumed by 1, 2, or 1,000 people or 1 million people. And I think the sooner that we realize that we're all on this life learning journey, and learning doesn't necessarily stop when you leave school, for example. It actually continues in many different shapes and forms. And to maybe take that learning thread a bit further and to say, you learned that you may be impatient and that you've got a sort of an attention for detail. How has that helped you with your FPV interests, for example? Because, that must be quite extraordinary, learning to fly a drone with some goggles on your head and feel like you're literally jumping off a building.
Yeah, so that whole process, I know in the beginning I spoke about, learning how to walk and you fall and you get data. And I think that's, our life is about, at its very core, you're just taking in data, basically, and you're learning from the data, or you aren't learning from the data, but you should be actively, I think, always trying to see the world as a mechanism for you to learn, because that's what the world is giving you. Well, it's not giving you anything. There is data all the time, and FPV was a cool experience because it's a totally new skill. It's a completely new skill. I had to basically hardwire my brain to do something that it was never able to do before. And also it's an interesting thing. And I'm not sure if you guys know much about it, but when you put the goggles on your head, but if you imagine your body's got all these sensors, and you basically telling your body to ignore some of the sensors and just focus on the particular ones. Like, you stand up, a lot of the time you stand up when you're flying, and your body's trying to balance, but all the visual input is telling you something completely different. So that whole kind of physical adaptation to this thing that I was trying to learn. It was difficult in the beginning. I couldn't do it. I had to sit down, and a lot of people who fly FPV will find that you can't stand in the beginning because your brain is so focused on these fine motor controls of trying to keep everything going. And it's like playing a video game, except you can't, in a video game, you can take your hands off the wheel and everything will be fine. Here you've got this thing flying around that weighs whatever, a kilogram, let's call it, with blades and all this sorts of stuff. So that's what took a while to learn, is to kind of hardwire the brain to ignore certain things. And the attention to detail aspect of that is what's cool about these sorts of things is you build them yourself. You build them up, and you break them all the time. You crash all the time, and then you build them back up again. And maybe that's an analog for kind of the whole journey you can go on to. You can start something and crash a whole lot of times, and you can almost always just build yourself up maybe a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, whatever the purpose is, and you can move forward from that. So the attention to detail side of FPV was an interesting start, I could say, because I had to teach the brain to do something completely different.
So if we take, that notion, Mike, of teaching yourself to do something completely different, and we've spoken about creation and the learnings that you've had, but what does that mean, do you think, for the way that we approach things more generally from a societal level, in terms of just having that acceptance of being able to fall over? Because yes, it's human nature, and it's the way that we learn, and it's the way that we go about doing things, and it's the way that we develop. But there's almost a stigma around failure, and we don't need to get too philosophical here, but what are some of your thoughts around how do we do that as, you and I are young thinkers, like we like to call them inside of the Reverse Mentor Lab? How do we make that more acceptable and get more young thinkers to fall over more regularly?
I think, failing is... the stigma around failing, I don't know where it really comes from, to be honest, because all the cliches are that failing is a good thing. So, I don't know if it's a mental block that we put in ourselves, that we feel like the world judges us if we fail. But I there's enough evidence, and without being all cliche about it, there's enough evidence out there that failing is a good thing. Not failing would mean there's something kind of going wrong. Like if you've never failed before, you probably aren't trying hard enough, realistically. If you haven't crashed, let's call it inverted commas in the context of this, you haven't crashed, you're not trying hard enough, you're not learning. And that's with anything. You've got to fail to succeed, I think, and we can all agree on that. And the stigma, it's a shame that the stigma is like that, but young leaders and young people like us really have to be, and most of the time I'd say you guys are probably the people in your friend group that people will look to and go, well, those are young thought leaders or people that are trying to push the boundaries. And if people see you try, and this is to the people listening, you guys are, and girls are either, you either these thought leaders in your group, or you aren't, or you want to be. And I think if you're showing your friend group, let's talk about just your friend group. If you're showing your friend group and your family that you're more than happy to try and to fail, then the stigma will go away, certainly in the micro within your friend group. And maybe your friends then also try and fail, and then that becomes okay. You have to start with yourself, though. I think that's what's important. People have to realize you have to start with yourself, and if you aren't willing to do it, then don't sit around and judge other people for not willing to try and fail. You have to do it. It needs to start with you. And hopefully, you're listening to this podcast because you want to, move forward in the world as a leader of the world one day, hopefully, or already now. And if you're willing to try and to fail in this, in the context of this conversation, in the sphere of social media and content creation and video and audio and whatever, if you're willing to try and to fail, then the people that follow you will probably also be willing to try and to fail. And what a world that would be in if everyone is learning rapidly because we're all pushing the boundaries. That's where you see innovation.
Love that. That's almost the perfect ending of the podcast. But as a last point, we always go into a challenge you would like the listeners to take, a challenge you would like to throw out into the world what would you like people to accomplish to challenge them on?
Yeah, so I had to think about this, and maybe this is a spin on some of the challenges you'll see on the internet. If you guys are on TikTok or Reels, Instagram rather, a lot of people are doing these things called 30-day Reels challenges or TikTok challenges. And I'll put a spin on that. I think you are a young thought leader, hopefully, or you want to be, and you are trying to, or you should be trying to build your own personal brand. That's you as a person. And I think it would be great if you could challenge yourself for the next 30 days, or maybe start next month and prep yourself up until that point of creating or documenting, and I'll use those two interchangeably, creating or documenting something every day for 30 days. And you don't have to put this up anywhere. You don't have to share it with anyone. You can talk about a particular subject and just video it yourself and keep it on your hard drive, and no one ever has to see it. That's fine. But take the time to do something every day, and it could be 10 seconds, 50 seconds, whatever, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever you choose to do, but create or document something every day for 30 days. And I think what you'll find is you will become very comfortable with expressing yourself, and you'll also find a way, you'll eventually want to share that stuff, because it's human nature. It's very difficult for someone to achieve something and not want to share it with at least their loved ones or, their friends closest to them. It's human nature. As a kid, you do something great and you run back over to your mom and dad and you go, look what I did. That lives on with us as we get older. It's very difficult to do something, achieve something without wanting recognition from somebody. That's a very primal thing that we have with us. So try that. Try to create content every day for 30 days, video, audio, text, write blogs, whatever it is, and see how you go.
Awesome. That's a great challenge.
Yeah, no, it resonates, Mike, and you'll hear in terms of Jens's world as well. He's seeking to inspire 1 million people to innovate, and I think in terms of what he's creating and the challenge that he's putting out to people it ties in very closely to what we've discussed in today's session about learning, just starting, not being scared of failure, and also learn through doing. And so to wrap up, Mike, sort of the last point is, what's your favorite channel? Where can people discover some of the work that you do? I know that you said that you're not paying too much attention to the analytics side of things, but where can people hit you up if they want to connect or follow you? Obviously, we'll link everything in the show notes, but what's your preferred channel?
Yeah, so I'm sort of creating content over on YouTube. So if you search Michael Houghton on YouTube or Michael Houghton FPV on YouTube, it'll probably pop up with some of my videos. That's where I'm mostly creating content with the drones and that sort of thing. And I have some projects on the side, a business that I'm starting up, which uses drones and stuff to capture content for all sorts of venues and brands, those sorts of things. But that's in the works. So that will probably be popping up in the next few months. And you can connect with me on Instagram. My handle is houghton.com. That's Houghton with DOT.com afterwards. So you can have a look at that in the show notes, and happy to chat about anything. I love connecting with people. And a lot of my subscribers on YouTube, I've actually become quite close with. And it's just because we chatted in the comments. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the internet. And these social platforms. So yeah, that's where you can connect with me and stay in touch.
Super. Thanks so much, Mike. And really appreciate your time. Thanks for being open and sharing your learnings, and all the best as you navigate your creation journey going forward. And I'm sure this dip that you're in, it's not really a dip, it's just part and parcel of learning through doing. So all the very best. And Jens, thanks for your time again today. It's been a super conversation. I've certainly learned a lot, and look forward to future episodes with you.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure talking to you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, both of you guys. It was great. Thanks for the questions. Very probing. I liked it a lot, and hopefully helpful to the listeners. And we'll hopefully see you guys around.
Thanks for listening and joining us on the journey that is the Reverse Mentor Lab. If anything fascinated you in the discussion that we had today, you're welcome to set up a 15-minute coffee chat with us. Our emails are in the show notes, and you can also connect with us on our website, thexyzplayground.com.